It appears Donald Trump has survived a second assassination attempt at his golf course in Florida, and we've already descended into narrative chaos, as can be expected. Depending on who you talk to, it's staged like the first one, like people said, or it's the deep state, or it didn't happen at all, or you name it, everyone's saying it. We still don't know anything, and it's just spinning out of control, and we're going to talk about it. And Wernher von Braun in 1948. The ghosts are just running amok in this house, right in the middle of everything, aren't they, Alex?
Oh yeah, no, it's just me tonight. That's I'll admit it.
What was I saying? I was going to say Wernher von Braun in 1948 wrote a book called The Mars Project. And if you don't know who von Braun is, he's Hitler's favorite scientist who built the V-2 rockets that was then hired by the American government to be part of NASA to build the rockets that went into so-called space. But in that book in 1948 that von Braun wrote, he said that when humans colonize Mars, the people running Mars, the government that is there, the leader of that government will be called Elon, which is interesting, isn't it? Or maybe not at all. I don't believe in coincidences. Do you believe in coincidences, Alex?
I think I do.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I don't know if I do anymore.
Really?
Actually, I know I don't anymore.
I question everything now.
Yeah.
This show is really taking me down a rabbit hole of things.
But it's a crazy day. Here we are once again.
Yes, we are. Here we are.
Shortly after another deranged bit of news in Florida with Trump, and it's just hard to know anything. Nothing's confirmed. There's pictures out there of supposed alleged assassin. Who knows what's real? I'm not getting emotional about anything yet, other than that fact that reality is disintegrating and X is accelerating it. And not just X, it's not unique to X. It's been happening for quite some time. It's a human condition. So it's actually really great that we have Drew on today, if we want to bring Drew on, to talk about the programming going on in the world. Drew, what is up? Tell us who you are, and let's get into it.
Hey, I'm Drew. I go by Drutang Reborn on Twitter, and yeah, I basically am a conspiracy theory author, I would say, and I guess the title I've given myself is information trafficker. It's generally my trade. I trade in rare and valuable information. So yeah, no, I'm excited for this convo today. A lot of stuff, like you mentioned, Wernher von Braun and of course the Trump assassination attempts now, plural.
So oh, sorry, what were you gonna say?
Oh yeah, it's just it all kind of follows the scripts. All these things, like Trump having a head wound. It's talked about in Revelation. The beast gets a head wound, miraculously recovers, and then the world follows him into the beast kingdom. But anyways, yeah, plenty of stuff to talk about. It should be fun.
Yeah, we have a bunch to talk about, and we'll get to that as well. And when you say you're a conspiracy theorist author, all I hear is I'm a historian. Because it seems to be a lot of the things that sound crazy to people turn out to be just fact. I forget. We peddle in this insane information of conspiracy theories, and when I talk to people in the real world who don't think about this stuff at all, God bless them, it's like they look at me like I have three heads. They're like, no, there's no way. They don't believe Operation Paperclip, and that's a fairly easy one to believe. Yeah,
it's in the Marvel movies.
Right? They're like, no way. Why would we love NASA? It couldn't be Nazis. But let's get to all that in just a bit. When it comes to today, and we see this news happening, we see a second attempt allegedly on Trump's life. What are you thinking, and how? Where were you with the last one? Just 2 months ago.
Yeah, I had just come in from the beach here in Miami, and my friends. I had a couple of friends over, and we were distracted in conversation. I opened up my phone and I see the video, and the video, at first, it's hard to tell what's going on because it's, the clip was just, bing, 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 and then he grabs his ear and goes down. You can't really tell what's happening initially. And, people are saying BB gun, and people are, there's all types of theories about what was going on in the confusion of the news breaking. But yeah, it was both shocking and kind of, expected. There have been, I think there was one other attempt on Trump's life before documented, where a guy tried to like grab a gun off one of his security guards or police officers at one of the rallies. But it's definitely, my thing is predictive programming, kind of trying to predict the future, which I have a fairly good track record of. But, predicting the future based off of basically the programming that the masses have received through our shared cultural mythology, which is kind of every culture has done this. The pharaohs of Egypt, they ruled by authority of Horus and Osiris, their mythology, their gods. The pharaoh in life was said to be the incarnation of Horus, and in death, Osiris. Osiris was a killed king, assassinated by Set, and Horus was his resurrected son. And that is at the core of this whole Trump assassination thing. It's a motif called the killing of the king ritual, in which you have a martyr king that is killed by his own people, say Julius Caesar, Jesus Christ, and then basically rulers rule by the authority of that killed king. So, for instance, the Roman emperors called themselves Caesar. They gave themselves the title Caesar, just like you were talking about with Wernher von Braun's book, The Mars Project, in which he says that the title given to the leader of the human Mars colony is Elon. It's not the leader's name, it's the title that he's given. So just like Caesar is the name of a person, right? But it's also the title. It's the same motif. So yeah, it fits. In terms of that, so I wasn't necessarily surprised by the assassination attempt.
When you say you're not surprised, when you say you're not surprised, is it because of what you're saying? You're looking at the history, and like these narratives are cyclical, and you already tapped in at that point, thinking this is what's going to play out because this is what happens throughout human history. Yeah. Basically, Trump. There is for the last couple of years, I've been. My research and my work, my second book is called American Apocalypse X, and it's I made the cover 2 years ago, and it's basically Trump, Musk, and Kanye photoshopped over the Avengers Infinity War cover. Musk as Iron Man, obviously. Trump as Captain America with a Q on his chest, and of course Kanye as the Black Panther. His dad was in the Black Panthers. Yep. But now you see Trump and other people making all these Justice League memes and Avenger memes. And, it's funny to see it organically, quote unquote, organically come up. Because it is, these themes. That's one instance. The killing of the king in relation to Trump was another thing I was expecting, along with the Avengers motif. So yeah, that's why I kind of expected it. Can you explain the killing of the king for those who don't know? Yeah, so it's all based off of what I was saying earlier with the ancient Egyptians. They basically, their mythology. So the most known stories and archetypes and characters of their civilization basically revolved around their two main gods, the father Osiris and the son Horus. And essentially the myth is that Osiris was killed by Set, his archetypal enemy. He was cut up into 14 pieces, and the pieces were scattered. His wife Isis retrieves and reassembles him, 13 pieces of him, except for his phallus, which was eaten by a fish. That's right. Famously. So if you ever seen that picture of John Podesta where he has his hands up and he has 14 on one hand and he has the fish on the other, yeah, that's what it's in reference to. And yeah, so what happens is she resurrects him by reassembling the 13 pieces and then crafting him in artificial, kind of in a almost transhumanist way, an artificial phallus that they then use to conceive his son Horus. And it's kind of his son, but it's also kind of his resurrection. It's kind of seen as his reincarnation.
But because he's not 100% organic, he's forced to be delegated to the underworld, the afterlife. So he ends up ruling the afterlife, and Horus then goes on to defeat Set, out in the land of the living. So the pharaohs of Egypt, they would say in life, they would rule by the authority of Horus. They were seen as a reincarnation of Horus. And the last pharaoh that died, they would become Osiris. And now their son, resurrected as Horus, would take over ruling the land of the living. So that is basically the motif of the killing of the king ritual. And like I said, those pharaohs, because of that myth and that mythology and their leader being a martyr, or, the myth of the martyr, that same exact thing you saw happen when the Roman Republic fell and with the rise of the Roman Empire. You have Caesar. He gets voted out of power on January 7th, 49 BC, so the Roman Senate could prosecute him through the legal system. He'd lose his legal immunity. Just so happens Donald Trump was voted out of power on the exact same day, 2,070 years later, on January 7th, 2021, only because of the totally organic January 6th insurrection, quote unquote.
Right.
Basically, yeah, so you have Caesar. He gets voted out of power on Jan 7th. This begins the Roman Civil War. He crosses the Rubicon, brings his armies into Rome, basically starts the Roman Civil War. He ends up winning this Roman Civil War. I know Tim Pool would be a big fan of hearing that there's a cyclical civil war that seems to fit in this era.
Yep.
He ends up winning. He rules. He's not technically the emperor at this point, but when he is killed, when the Senate kills him in the famous Ides of March, he's killed by his own people. Then not his actual son, not his blood son, but his basically adopted son, Octavian, ends up going through a power struggle, becomes the first emperor, and then since that point, all the Roman emperors called themselves Caesar. They gave them the title Caesar, and basically ruled by the authority of their killed king. In America, this is one big thing with Trump, is we've had two major killed kings. We had Abraham Lincoln, who basically ended the idea of a federation of states, and it became one federal entity. Before it was the United States, and then afterwards it was, the United States.
Right.
If you understand what I'm saying.
Right.
There's a line in National Treasure. Nick Cage says it a lot better than me. But we actually have the same birthday, Jan 7th, Nick Cage.
Really?
But
is that a coincidence? Maybe not.
Yeah. So anyways, he fits the Caesar role. Same exact thing. You rule by the authority of the killed king. We have Abraham Lincoln and JFK.
Yep.
If you notice, a lot of the mythology that supports Donald Trump as a political savior and populist revolves around the JFK assassination, especially very recently with the alliance with RFK Jr., who he's got like a quadruple killing of the king ritual going on.
Yeah,
RFK,
seriously.
JFK Jr., and he's the last man standing, and now he's in alliance with Trump. Of course, Trump with the QAnon lore that kind of turned that mythology, allowed Trump to kind of gain this archetype that he's embodying right now in his most ardent supporters. Without QAnon, there would be no Jan 6. There would be no QAnon shaman as the poster child for it.
Right.
Without QAnon, and a lot of QAnon had to do with JFK Jr. There was a lot of talk within that community of Trump's friendship with JFK Jr. and how Trump was basically in alignment with the Kennedy family and kind of avenging. Kennedy is basically the poster child for where I said Abraham Lincoln kind of created this federal entity and created this, tyranny of centralization of power.
Yep.
JFK, he represents a different civil war that he didn't win. He lost against the deep state, against CIA. So now you have Trump basically going to rule by the authority of the killed King JFK. And the cycle perpetuates.
So I want to go back to a few things you said.
Yeah, you explained it really well, but I think I need the cliff notes.
No, that was great. And I want to go back to one, without getting too much on a tangent, but you brought up the severed phallus thing, and it's hard not to talk about that and not talk about Washington, D.C., the obelisk. Can you explain, do you see the connection there? Perfect. And if so, can you explain that for us?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was trying to think of, I had already gone on a long rant, but I wanted to bring that up. So the phallus part is extremely important, and it kind of goes back, it is remarkable how similar every single major shift of empire has happened. It's just, they're using literally the exact same monuments in many cases. Yeah. So you have the obelisks, famously in ancient Egypt. Everyone's familiar with them, the big, tall, pointy, phallic objects. Yep. In the older dynasties of Egypt, they kind of went through different phases of what their main gods were. Yep. Basically, the cult of priests kind of switched over their mythology as time went on, as they kind of switching over of an empire's lore, like we just talked about with our Abraham Lincoln and JFK. And Abraham Lincoln being killed, it people that really galvanized the Union and made it okay. Well, our leader, he's killed. You understand? Yep. But anyways, after Abraham Lincoln was killed, they finally finished the Washington Monument. That's right. Which is kind of a double killing of the king. And what's interesting about Washington himself, he actually died because he got bloodletted. He was killed by his doctor.
I didn't know that.
He was sick, but they were bloodletting him. Huh. And they blame it on the disease or whatever, but they were draining this guy, literally, stabbing him and bleeding him out.
Which was big back then, right? It wasn't it was not a rare thing. That's what people thought they could do that to heal ailments of various degrees.
Yep. Using using a needle, which the word obelisk, the Greek root of the word obelisk means needle.
Oh man.
And Trump's obelisk is the vaccine needle.
Warp speed.
But we'll get to that.